think there's like a Mean Girls trying to get out here. I really wanted to try and like breathe new life into them. Love gets interrupted, or that level of quality time when you can just sit around drinking tea. People have said to me that they watch this film and they sit with a smile on their face. It was the time of my life. Say the thing you want to say, tell the person you love them that you love them.
Finding Emily is the latest rom-com from Working Title, the studio behind Four Weddings, Notting Hill, Bridget Jones, About Time, and of course Pride and Prejudice.
I don't understand.
I love you. Most ardently.
Leading the film are two fantastic performances from Spike Fern, who you may know from Alien Romulus, and Gowrie Rice from the Tom Holland Spider-Man films and HBO's Mayor of Easttown. For my first interview, I had the pleasure of sitting down with the film's director, Alicia MacDonald. We talked finding love, the madness of uni life, her work with cinematographer Rachel Clarke, and how she built the soundtrack with music supervisor Ian Cook. I really hope you enjoy this conversation as much as I did, so without further ado, here is my conversation with Finding Emily director, Alicia MacDonald.
Rom-coms have got a really bad rep of recent. Like the recent ones are sort of like glossy and shiny and don't leave you feeling really like malnourished. And I was just like, I don't want to do that. And so I was really excited about the opportunity of like, how do you make a good one? And in my opinion, the good ones are the ones in the kind of 90s. So 10 Things I Hate About You and Clueless were big influences. And actually the original Mean Girls as well. I remember when I first read the script, I read it in one sort of sitting and I was like, I think there's like a Mean Girls trying to get out here in terms of something that's really funny and romantic and great, but has this like message about kind of romance in that day and age. But also like there were older ones, His Girl Friday, the kind of Howard Hawks movie. Have you ever seen that one?
I've not seen that one.
Add it to your list, it's really fun. It's one of those old like black and white movies where they speak really quickly, they're like ba ba ba, and it's such a mad energy, and I kind of wanted a bit of that, as well as the one I also wrote is When Harry Met Sally, which is obviously the best.
So in Scream, Randy famously lays out the rules of a slasher film. If you had to do the same for a rom-com, what do you think the right ingredients to make a good one is?
The rules of the rom-com?
Yeah.
Well, you've got your meet cute.
Last night, I met this girl called Emily. Felt like time stood still.
Right, like so, and I feel quite lucky because I get to have sort of two of them in my film.
What are you doing?
I'm looking for this girl called Emily.
In terms of the rom-com tropes, I was aware of them, but I really wanted to try and like breathe new life into them so that an audience could watch them and go, oh cool, that's the meet cute, but could also go, oh that's fun, or that's different, like so that it would feel fresh. So there's the meet cute. There is what are the other good ones? I guess like opposites attracting, like two completely different people coming together and then realising that maybe they're not so different after all, which feels like Owen and Emily. I mean, there's always the sort of all hope is lost, boy loses girl, or girl loses boy in this case, moment where everything goes so terribly wrong and there's a sad montage. And then the kind of grand gesture.
Family's listening. What do you want to say?
Well, I wrote her a song.
Or the big speech. Those are the, I think those are the rom-com tropes. Meet cute, opposites attracting, all hope's lost, and then the grand gesture, and they come together at the end.
I really appreciated the film's portrayal of masculinity and like the time given to him and his brother. How did you approach that dynamic? How did that evolve from the page through rehearsals, working with Spike and Jack? Because like one of my favourite scenes is them in the car.
They were so, again, Jack read for Owen as well, and he wasn't right for Owen, he was too old, but he was so gorgeous and he was so great. And I remember at the read-through, the first read-through that we did in Manchester, and we got all the cast there, and Spike was nervous. It's like it was his first big role. And Jack just sort of took him aside and they went outside and just had a chat. And I remember watching thinking, oh my God, that's so great. And Jack really did sort of take him under his wing. And I think that relationship was something that was really important to me. There weren't any obvious influences. I think I just wanted them to feel like real brothers. And I'd sort of added this grief element of their mum and the house selling and all of that. And Jack is such a clever actor because there's a scene where they call Owen and he's in the field and it's a two-shot and Freya is sat there and she goes like, your brother's going to come pick you up, and Jack's face then is just, he so easily could have gone for the like, oh I don't want to pick up my brother, but he just does this gorgeous like it's like a hint of resigned, it's a hint of like he just wants to go and pick him up and be there for him. He gets up immediately and goes and he's such a clever, gorgeous actor. And we spoke about that relationship being like, he's not great with words, but his love language, words of affirmation, like are acts of service. So he does do that for his brother. And then the car scene, again, it was like one of those tiny scenes that I'd added that was like one line in the script that was like, Matt goes and picks up Owen, and in the car on the way back, you can't really say words properly, but a song comes on that they know, and he sort of starts tapping along, and then Owen eventually smiles. It was like a tiny scene.
Yeah.
And then when I spoke to Jack and Spike, I was like, what can it be? What can we sing? Like what? And and Spike's mum's favourite song is Tom Tom Club, is Weddy Rapping Hood, and he's like, maybe we could do that. I was like, yeah. And so they had like learnt the lines, but it was funny because on the day when we came to do it, Jack, neither of them had learnt the French bit, so Jack just goes, "I'll be funny. We'll just go French, 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 French," and it's so. It's just so great.
And another thing about like small scenes in is it the chicken shop? That's such a universal experience at university. Just the random interactions with the most weirdest of people. How did you think of that? And
that was one I did have to fight for, because there's going back to the sort of formula of rom-coms, is that at that moment they should have just been having a nice time, right? They've had that moment with sitting on the stoop where she goes, "Don't make me laugh," and he goes, "I didn't know I could," and you're like, dreamy eyes, and we should have just montaged our way through to the end of that night. But I going back to, as you said, a uni experience, I was like, this kind of stuff does happen. And you do like end up in a scrappy fight at 2 o'clock in the morning by some random girl that's just come in and got totally the wrong end of the stick. And it was something that I just felt was real. And that's what happens. Like, love gets interrupted, and it isn't just plain sailing and a sort of montage track. And I sort of, I think you learn so much about the two of them as well in that scene, that you see that Owen's super uncomfortable. He's not a fighter. He's a lover, not a fighter. And he's not happy. And she is super, like, stands up and defends him. And it was really important that she defended him. And she sort of, it was much longer in the director's cut. It was a much longer scene, but there was a sort of consensus that we needed to get through it.
Friendship feels like the backbone of the film. And I feel like that's so true to university. And I wondered if you could speak about that.
Yeah, I think it really. Oh, I love that you've said that. I think friendship really is the backbone. I mean, as you say, university friendships are so intense, and you spend all this time with these people, and it's really close, intimate kind of quarters. And I think I really wanted to get that across. So things like the scene where Anna's in the bath and Emily's sort of talking to her about him, like it wasn't scripted in the bath, but I staged it there because I think that's sort of like it was a visual indicator of their intimacy and the ease that they have together, and I love the closeness of those friendships, and you never quite get them back, that quality or that level of quality time when you can just sit around drinking tea and talking nonsense, and it's the best time when the real world isn't there and hasn't crowded in yet. And Cora is such a clever actor, and she had so many questions and wanted that depth as well. And so the dancing scene, again, it was like a little, just like a little thing. Anna dances her out of her sadness, and it was one that I wanted it to feel real. Polly Bennett, who's an amazing movement director, who did a lot of movement directing with the sort of like crowd and choreography, and she's fantastic. And I wanted her to come in and help choreograph that scene for them, and she was amazing. And the two actors, Cora and Gary, loved working with her so much, and they loved it. And I sat kind of, because I'm hiding with my monitor sort of behind the kitchen, like watching it, and I just cried and cried the first time I watched it, because Gary was so in it and so free. And it's one of the few scenes where you see her really free emotions out, and it's her friend that's pulled her out of it, and so I love that is it's a non-verbal, like, I've got you moment. And so
you can really tell in their friendship they could totally just sit next to each other for hours without speaking. And I love that Anna, she calls her out too. Yeah,
it was cool actually, because I remember when in that kind of art, it's a sort of art gallery cafe where Anna works, and Emily comes and is like, oh my God, this happened, and Anna is so. What I loved about both Gary and Cora was in that scene that they both go, I love you, but this, and I love you, but that. And that was additions by them, just going, this is how I would speak to my friend, as I would tell her I love her, but I would also then call her out. And that was going back to the kind of keeping the Gen Z of it all that felt real. And I think in movies sometimes can be, people just call each other out without it feeling legit, but they made it feel really honest.
So universities, we've kind of spoken a little about this already, but university is such like a singular period. What did you think that the environment brought to that genre? And I wondered how you worked with the cinematographer, Rachel Clarke, to capture that.
I mean, as you say, it's a sort of specific stage of life where you're desperately trying to be a grown-up, but you're not, but you're all over the shop and you're making terrible romantic decisions, and like, it was sort of mad to me that not more is set there.
Yeah.
And with Rachel, we had a whole plan. Like I've spoken a lot about the sort of two shots element of like keeping the two of them in a two shot wherever we could, which adds this kind of energy that anything can kind of happen, I think. And it adds this sort of comedy as well. Like I love the shot of the two of them sat before he's about to send the email, and it's a sort of front on two shot. And I love it because you can sort of switch between the two of them, and she's sort of making weird faces and he's this, and just letting their differences sort of play out before you was the sort of key thing we wanted to do. But we used a lot of Steadicam, we wanted a lot of movement. Rachel's happy place is handheld, like with the camera on her shoulder. She's so balletic when it comes to working with the actors. And so so for the more kind of intense moments, we would go handheld.
I loved the talking of two shots, the scene of them when they're about to order a curry and how they almost do like a, what's the film called? Like a Meet Joe Black moment when they're looking back at each other.
That was one of those lucky things as well where Spike happened to turn around at exactly the moment that we pulled focus that he didn't know about. He didn't, like, none of us planned it. And I was like, oh my God, he just turned around exactly the right moment and he didn't know. But yeah, and again, that was one of those ones where with the two shot, we only ever played it in a two. I remember getting a sort of a note being like, can we cut to a close up there? And I was like, I didn't shoot them. I'm sorry. Because I didn't want them, because I love seeing the two of them, like the agony of that. Yeah. And there were so many great takes of that. It was a really hard one to sort of choose like which one there, because they were so brilliant. And actually on that day, the day that we did the canal scene where he gets the text, that morning we'd shot the ending of the film. With like scheduling and stuff, you can never plan these things, but I think it really shifted their relationship as actors to kind of do the end and then in the afternoon shoot that kind of scene. And Spike does this gorgeous thing where he kind of like butts his head onto her. And he does it at the kiss, and then he did it just there. And it's like, oh, you're so clever because you've linked those two. And we never could have planned how you schedule these things, but it was just
worked out.
It just worked.
Yeah. The music we listen to in our late teens, early 20s often becomes the soundtrack for the rest of our lives. Could you talk about working with music supervisor Ian Cook and like where the soundtrack began? So
Blossoms had been scripted to be in the film. And then like Ian Cook, who's amazing music supervisor, who I've worked with since the beginning actually, he helped me out on one of my first short films, Clear This Track. And then he was on Pure, which was my first TV show. He was on Too Much, and then I asked him if he'd do the film. So he feels like a sort of weird surrogate father. I mean, he's not old enough to be my father, but he's been such a support of my career, and he's the absolute best. And so he was like, we'll just ask Blossoms, like nothing, like he was like, we'll just ask them and see what happens. And then so I did a Zoom with Blossoms and was like, hey guys, and they were so great and keen, and they'd read the script and they really loved it. And then, that song, there's a reason why, like, that Ian had found that on one of their like older albums and was like, did you know they have this? And I was like, you are joking me. This is perfect.
It fits so well.
It's so good. Because Love Talk, I'd known and I wanted Love Talk in there. And then when we found that, it was like the best thing ever. But then the rest of the soundtrack was this sort of constantly morphing thing. I was listening to music all the time, to and from the edit. And my favourite thing is the James Blake cover of Joy Division's Atmosphere, which came quite late in the edit. We'd had a different track on that kind of sad montage for ages. And then I was just walking. I walked to the edit every day because I kind of needed the headspace. Yeah. And I'd just been on the phone to Ian because we were doing a screening that afternoon in the screening room. And he was like, any new tracks for me? Because they'd obviously watch. And then I'd go, hey, so I've put Carly Rae Jepsen in. And he'd be like, okay, we can ask the question. And I'd got off the phone to Ian, and then my music was on shuffle or whatever, and my algorithm had been, and still is, sort of sad love, Manchester, melancholy, and this James Blake cover like just shuffled on, and I like stopped in the street and was like, what is this, and how have I not heard this? And I sent it to Phil, my editor. I was like, can we lay this up and see if it works? And by the time I got in, he'd laid it up, and we hadn't even made any changes to that kind of moment where Owen sees the wall, and it just fits so perfectly, and it was so cool.
When you were doing location scouting, what was that process like?
Yeah, it was so fun. The location scouting thing is so interesting because it really does start to come alive, and our locations team were so amazing at showing us their places like that. There's where Owen and Fairy Emily end up like running out, and they have their kind of goodbye moment, that huge space where they sort of shelter from the rain. When we went there, I was like, this place is amazing. And I think people have shot there before, but I was like, oh, this feels so cool. It's by the canals and there's sort of all these industrial and the trains and stuff like that. Felt like a definite.
How did you find that final bridge?
Well, that is the bridge that goes into the Stoller Hall, which is where she does her thing. And I was like, is this too mad? Because there was another exit where it was more just like a sort of doorway. And then we found that there was this bridge that had Manchester in the background. I was like, I think this could be cool, and they could meet. I was like, is it too dramatic? Is it okay? And it was great. Canal Street was one of those things. It wasn't scripted that it was Canal Street, but he had to go bar hopping somewhere, and locations department showed me like a couple of other streets, and they're like, there is Canal Street, which is, you know, it's the famous one. It'll be quite complicated to to try and close it down and try and shoot here, but we could do that. And I was like, let's do that. That would be really cool. I mean, it was mad. And we had this amazing first AD, Shelley, who was just all over it and was just like, right, it's going to be super quick, but we're going to go. And everyone was so hyper-focused because we didn't have enough time. We basically had one go at all of it. There were 200 extras. There was just so much going on. But it was really good because everyone was just like up for a laugh. I remember Henry, our Steadicam operator, who was amazing, was with us the whole time. And that last shot at the end of Angari, when she runs out after him going like, are we going to the next one? Or wait, and we'd covered him off and we'd done a 2-shot, and Henry was like, we had like a minute left to go. And Henry was like, I don't think we've got it, you know, I don't think we have her. I don't think we have her side. And in like dying minutes, Angari like absolutely nails it, and we do one take, and it was just so like intense, but we got it all. But I just love how everyone was really hyper focused and just on it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Sounds like such a fun time.
It was really fun, and that's the thing. Like, it's so mad talking about it now retrospectively and sort of looking back on it, because it was the time of my life, and I feel so. I get really emotional. I feel so lucky that I got to do this thing, and that I got to have as much fun as I did, and to make this thing that I'm so proud of. And it's the coolest thing.
Coolest thing.
Yeah.
What would you want audiences to take away from Finding Emily?
What I want people to take away, I think I've been thinking a lot about the kind of films that I want to put into the world, and I was a big Rob Reiner fan, and he has some quote that I'm going to get wrong, but he talks about putting, like, not taking away, but putting kind of goodness and positivity. People have said to me that they watch this film and they sit with a smile on their face the whole time, and that to me it was never my plan, but that makes me feel so. Just so thrilled, because this life is really gnarly and long and complicated, and we don't know what we're doing here. And I have a real sort of existential. I felt in making this film that you're asking people to spend 2 of their precious life hours watching a film that you make. And I think it's a real responsibility to entertain and not just entertain, but to try and like say something positive or be hopeful and good, and I think especially with romance, with romantic films, like to sort of say the thing. Like, you don't know how much time you have. We all take for granted that we have all this time. Well, you don't. So you should say the thing you want to say. Tell the person you love them that you love them, and not just romantically, but your friends. You know, the people whoever your important people are. Like, tell them, because it's really important, and we don't say it often enough, and that we all get, especially like modern love, where everyone's a bit like non-committal and cool. But like, how nice to just sort of say the thing.
There's a line in the film where it's like, I can't remember what her character's name was, but when she sees him playing the song, and she's like, no, he's free because he knows he's cringe, but he's doing it anyway.
I love that you've pointed that line out. That was, she goes, what does she go? That guy is free. Like, the true freedom in this life is knowing you're cringe and doing it anyway. That guy is free. Yeah. And, that was so funny. That was one of those things that I'd put in there, and bless her, the actor was like, I don't know if I can get this, if I can do this, but she did it like so. Julia, she's so great, and there was more to that scene, but in the end, that was like all we needed, was just someone to go like, not being afraid to be cringe is the way forward, I love that. I love that you picked up on that.